No beast has ever broken the grip of Kravinov.
Oh, okay. I think I see the confusion.
Get ready, true believers. We've got quite the video in store for you all today. We're looking at the many vile villains of the spectacular Spider-Man and deciding the best ways the justice system could deal with them. There's no Spider-Man nor epic battles in New York here, just a collection of villains and the court of law. With all that laid out, it's time to get this court into session. I'm Keefe Inosi with Wicked Binge, and this is sentencing spectacular Spider-Man villains for their crimes. Let's start this video off with one of the smaller villains, shall we? First up to the stand today is the Black Cat herself. Like all other versions of this character, Black Cat is a thief. From jewelry to cash, Felicia Hardy sees all of it as hers for the taking. She's even tried to steal the alien symbiote in one episode. Because of that, we can immediately mark her down as being guilty of theft.
I think like a thief.
In one of her later appearances, she breaks into the vault, a very secure prison, in an effort to get her father out. That means she's also committed an act of breaking and entering. Those are two pretty bad crimes to have attached to your name, but with Felicia, it's important to remember that she is still very young. Not only that, but her criminal actions are mostly done for her father. She doesn't steal just because she finds it fun or has a desire for evil, but simply to help out her father.
Gee, Dad, what'd you do to this guy?
Despite being so young, it seems like Black Cat has more humanity than a lot of the other villains in Spidey's rogues gallery. When she enters the vault to find her father, she decides not to free him due to the nature of the crimes he has committed. Once again, we see she has a moral compass that most characters we'll be covering today do not have. As a result of all this, we've decided to give Miss Hardy a house arrest sentence. Her heart is in the right place, but being around banks and prisons, not so much. This feels like the appropriate punishment given her crimes and her character. At the very least, all the other villains will be wishing they got off this easily. Going from a cat-themed kind of antagonist to a full-on antagonist who can turn into a cat. Our next villain of the day is the imposing Kraven the Hunter. Just like his name implies, Kraven is obsessed with the hunt. And there is no being he's more enamored with in his pursuit of the hunt than the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Kraven, the Hunter.
He tries multiple times throughout the show to kill Spidey. Sounds like some maybe attempted murder to us. He stalks the wall crawler just as he would any of his other victims, adding a stalking charge to his rap sheet. Last but not least, Kraven becomes guilty of breaking and entering when he enters Ravencroft to get Electro and Doc Ock out of prison, although he only succeeds in getting one of them out. Overall, Kraven the Hunter isn't the most vile villain to hit the Big Apple. After all, he loves animals. That's one good thing going for him. Still, his love of the animal kingdom doesn't absolve him of trying to kill a teenager and aiding many of the other supervillains. So for all those reasons, we decided this Hunter will spend the next 15 years locked in a cage. Maybe after all that time, Kraven will think twice about breaking out criminals. Yeah, probably not, but it's the thought that counts. Next up is the big man himself, Tombstone. Unlike Felicia or Kraven, Tombstone isn't the type of villain to break into jail or steal jewels. Instead, he hires other criminals to do his dirty work for him. For example, he enlists Hammerhead to try and destroy Spider-Man in one of his first appearances.
Shut the door on your way out.
Off of just that one plan, we can incriminate Tombstone for not only attempted murder, but also conspiring, something he does frequently throughout the show. Third and finally, we're gonna charge Tombstone with corruption. He's a crime lord, so it does come with the territory, but it's one we definitely cannot overlook. He puts on a nice and polite image of himself as a charitable man to the public, when in reality, he only cares about gaining more and more power. It's now time to sentence the big guy, and we believe it's best if he spends 20 years behind bars. Quite frankly, Tombstone could have easily gotten an even harsher sentence, but since he does seem to have some sort of moral compass, as seen in his unlikely team-ups with Spidey, we let him off a little bit easy here. Besides, when you look at some of the villains coming up later and their crimes, Tombstone doesn't look quite so bad in comparison. It's now time to put one of Spider-Man's most classic villains, Dr. Octopus, to trial. Unlike his movie counterpart, this Doc Ock is all villainy. He doesn't have a tragic backstory nor understandable motivations. He's simply out to take over the entire world and to take down all who oppose him.
Call me Dr. Octopus.
Like essentially all the villains in this show, he tries to kill Spider-Man and other innocent civilians, so we can go ahead and charge him with attempted murder. Otto later participates in a jailbreak in his second appearance, adding another charge to his sentence. A later appearance features him kidnapping Captain Stacy, whom he only agrees to let go after he grants him permission to control every computer in New York. In one episode, he kidnaps a police officer and then blackmails him. When we said he was evil, we were not kidding. Throughout all of his appearances, Octavius frequently terrorizes and endangers the citizens of New York City. This makes him guilty of terrorism, the first but not last Spidey villain to be connected with that particular crime. Doc Ock is more than deserving of being recognized as one of Spider-Man's most dangerous villains, but unfortunately for him, the reward for that is something nobody would ever want. Dr. Octopus is the first villain of today to receive the death sentence. We have no idea how this would be inflicted on a man with 4 giant mechanical tentacles welded to his back, but we can imagine that it'll be anything but a pleasant experience. At the very least, Otto can rest knowing he'll be recognized for his actions, but one has to wonder if those actions could have been maybe better ones. Jumping from one member of the sinister Sinister Six to another, introducing everyone's favorite southern savage, at least in this version, the Shocker. While he might not be as infamous as someone like Doc Ock or the Green Goblin, Shocker is not a villain to sneeze at either. A highly powerful criminal for hire, Shocker's enlisted on multiple occasions to kill Spider-Man. With the obvious attempted murder charge out of the way, Shocker also frequently robs banks and other venues in the series. Like we said, he's not a big-time bad guy like others in the show are. Stealing money and doing odd jobs for other villains are the main things Shocker does, and that's just fine by him. Later on, he breaks out of jail thanks to some help from the Green Goblin. His last notable criminal charge is vandalism, which we see him do plenty of in the show, but the most obvious time might be when he faces off against Spider-Man in an old theater. By the end of the fight, the theater is non-existent.
Next time, Bug.
Go! If that isn't vandalism, to say the least, we don't know what is. Although Shocker might be one of the Wallcrawler's less notable villains, I quite like him, and he remains a dangerous foe in his own right, and one you don't want to get on the wrong side of. It's time to release our verdict, and for the man known as Jackson Bryce, we give him 20 years in the Slammer. That might come as a shock to old Montana, but it makes sense given the amount of crimes he's committed and their severity. Who's old, flies in the air, and wants revenge on Norman Osborn? None other than Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, of course. After his invention is rejected by Oscorp, only for it to be unveiled later with no involvement from him, Toomes becomes deeply obsessed with taking down Osborn.
Osborn, you stole my work!
He both kidnaps and nearly murders Norman shortly after these events, with the timely arrival of Spider-Man being the main contributing factor to Vulture's plan not being successful. That's 2 offenses in one episode, and since he attacks both Spidey and Osborn, we can go ahead and charge him with assault as well. In addition to that, he's guilty of breaking out of jail not once, but 2 times. Vulture is incredibly narrow-minded in his pursuit of Osborn, and it's that refusal to change and let go of the past that gets Toomes 20 years in prison. Needless to say, this is one Vulture that won't be taking flight anytime in the near future. Our next villain might just be the most appropriately named villain in all of Spider-Man lore. It's the Chameleon. Somewhat akin to an actual chameleon, this antagonist often disguises himself as other characters in the show, and never for good-hearted reasons. Usually it's done to falsely incriminate others.
This time, I have someone a little different in mind.
He does this in one of his earliest appearances on the show when he disguises himself as Spidey to rob a bank alongside other supervillains. This particular action also means that he's guilty of theft, too. Besides that, however, the Chameleon doesn't have a lot of crimes to his name. He was one of the more underutilized villains in the series, and that does help him get more lenient of a sentence than most other characters we've covered today. Even so, incrimination and theft are not crimes anyone would take lightly, and due to that, we're going to give Chameleon a decade behind bars. Chameleon might have a useful set of skills at his disposal, but sadly for him, none of those are going to be any help in getting him out of prison. Instead, he'll have to try something a bit different, being on his best behavior. Speaking of the Chameleon, let's take a look at one of his henchmen.
The master of illusion himself, the menacing Mysterio!
Once a special effects artist, Quentin Beck becomes a part of the Chameleon's criminal crew sometime afterward, only to go solo and don the identity of Mysterio after that.
Are we being punked? I hate that.
He steals equipment from places like Oscorp to create this character, making him guilty of both breaking and entering and theft right from his inception. Since it was also Quentin's technology that was used by the Chameleon to falsely incriminate Spider-Man, it only makes sense if we add that charge to his sheet as well. Mysterio could easily be charged with several other crimes, but luckily for him, many of his appearances in the show are little more than robots created to fool the police and Spidey. As such, we don't think it technically makes sense to charge him with those. Even without those offenses, however, Mysterio remains a danger to the people of New York and gets a more deserving 15 years in the doghouse from us. On one hand, that's not quite as bad of a sentence as other Spidey foes have gotten. On the other hand, no amount of robot clones is going to help Mysterio wriggle out of this mess. Also, this isn't part of the script, I just gotta say, Mysterio, best Spidey villain, easily, fight me. Coming up next to the stand is the one, the only, at least in Marvel, Sandman. Originally a petty crook known as Flint Marko, the Sandman came into being after he was experimented on and given the ability of sand. It's better than it sounds. Unlike other villains in the show, Marko's only interested in money. He doesn't want to take over the world nor kill Spider-Man, but he wants to get his hands on as much cash as possible.
Flint Marko was a nobody, but everyone will know the name Sandman.
Because of that, it's not surprising that theft is the main thing we'll be charging Flint with. He also has broken out of jail on a few occasions throughout the show, and like the majority of characters we're looking at here, his encounters with Spider-Man make him guilty of attempted murder. Sandman is a dangerous and formidable member of Spidey's large cast of villains, but he has something many of them lack: a heart. After Spider-Man tries to stop him from robbing an oil tanker, an explosion breaks out and the two join forces to save the men aboard. For a moment, it even appears that Sandman is sacrificed sacrificed himself to get them to safety. Though it doesn't absolve him of his crimes, it's something that makes him a far better person than most of his contemporaries. Be serious for a moment. Could you see Dr. Octopus or Mysterio doing something like that? I mean, Mysterio's the best, but he's got other things to do. Due to this notable moment of heroism, we're giving Flint Marko only 5 years behind bars. We're also doing that because, if we're being honest, how would Sandman even fare in a jail cell? Couldn't he just turn into sand and sneak out through the bars? I feel like we need to take some, precautionary measures here. Whether it's his heart or his odd abilities, Sandman can take solace in the fact that he'll fare much better from the justice system than most of Spidey's opponents will. It's time we talk about Tombstone's right-hand man, Hammerhead. A member of his organized crime family, Hammerhead often acts as the enforcer for many of Tombstone's criminal plans. Besides being involved with organized crime, he's also guilty of attempted murder and assault on account of his battles with Spider-Man. As a villain of the Arachnid Kid, it kinda comes with the territory at this point. His last notable offense in the series is conspiracy.
See, boss, it's good you brung me. You need me watching your back.
He betrays Tombstone right amid a war with the other crime lords of New York, choosing to ally himself with the Green Goblin in the conflict. As his character is so closely intertwined with Tombstone's, we think it would be most appropriate for Hammerhead to be given a sentence comparable to his. However, if we compare the character's crimes, we feel Hammerhead is actually the more despicable of the two. Tombstone takes a secretive approach to crime and is even willing to work alongside Spider-Man if the need arises. Hammerhead, on the other hand, is far more blatant in his evil doings and straight up betrays Tombstone. You know how bad you've got to be to betray him, of all characters? Due to this, Hammerhead will be spending the next 25 years in prison. To be fair, Hammerhead wanted to be the big crime lord of New York City. It looks like he got exactly what he wanted, if you ask us. Up next is the dangerous, albeit dim-witted, Rhino. Another one of Norman's experiments gone wrong. The Rhino, like Sandman, was a small-time crook with his eyes focused on theft and little else. After his transformation into the Rhino, however, he quickly became one of Spidey's most formidable foes. His encounters with the superpowered high schooler make him guilty of both assault as well as attempted murder. He's also guilty of jailbreak for when he breaks out with other villains, creating the Sinister Six in the process. Last but certainly not least, if there's one thing that follows Rhino anywhere and everywhere, it's vandalism. When he's on the prowl, you can bet your bottom dollar that the streets are going to look anything but safe. On account of these 5 charges, we sentence the Rhino to 25 years in prison, just like Hammerhead before him. Like his Animal Kingdom counterpart, Rhino will be spending a long time in captivity, although he might have it worse. We're certain the food rhinos eat in zoos isn't anywhere near as bad as prison food, at least. Joining the likes of Rhino and the Vulture as another animal-themed villain, the next face to go on trial is Dr. Curt Connors, better known as the Lizard. A scientist looking to use the DNA of a lizard to regrow his lost arm. His experiment goes wrong, big surprise, turning him into a ferocious and monstrous man-sized reptile. After the transformation, Lizard wreaks havoc all across New York, making him guilty of vandalism. He even tries to eat a woman at one point, which we'll go ahead and count as attempted murder. As Spider-Man tries to stop him, he continues to fight against him, adding an assault charge to his list of crimes. That does it for Lizard's criminal offenses, so I guess it's time to sentence him. However, when it comes to Dr. Connors, there comes a question about how do we actually try him. Remember, it was the Lizard who did all these crimes, not Connors. For his part, Curt seems remorseful for everything his experiments end up causing. It also doesn't seem like Connors is ever in control at all when in the Lizard form, honestly being more akin to a victim than a perpetrator. Because of Connors' feelings toward the Lizard and a lack of agency in the crimes committed by the Lizard, we've decided to give this doctor our first and only pardon of the day. Curt Connors really does seem like a person who is deeply sorry for every crime the Lizard's committed. Between that and the fact that the Lizard doesn't reappear in future episodes, it seems safe to say that this is one of the characters who did turn over a new leaf. If only some of the others here could have done similarly. We're nearing the end of sentencing Spidey's villains, and up next is a most electrifying one. Who else but Electro? An electrician who falls into a vat of eels, Electro is the last member of the Sinister Six we'll be covering today, and he's arguably one of the most dangerous. Blaming his boss, Curt Connors, for his new condition, he attempts to kill both him and the Wallcrawler shortly after acquiring his powers.
Where's Connors?
Later on, he helps break several villains out of jail, leading to the birth of the Sinister Six. Lastly, much like the Rhino, destruction seems to follow Electro every time he's up to no good, meaning that we can go ahead and charge him with vandalism.
Told you, it's Electro.
Overall, Electro, like most of the other members of the Sinister Six, is one who we don't feel all too comfortable letting roam around free. Like a lot of them, he gets 20 years of prison time. If there's anything optimistic we can say about his sentence, it's that it's definitely not as bad as what the next 2 characters will be getting. Our second to last villain to put on trial today is the ever infamous Venom! Not Eddie Brock nor Peter Parker, mind you, but the Venom symbiote itself. Remember, the symbiote feeds on the negative energies of its host and manipulates them into doing whatever it wants. It makes the most sense to try the symbiote rather than any of its hosts. So right from the get-go, we can accuse the symbiote of possession, as that is exactly what it does to both Peter and Brock.
This alien, it's some kind of Symbiote.
The Venom symbiote is quite the stalker as well. Whenever it's without a host, it quickly sets its sights on a new one and will pursue them until they have amalgamated. It's also guilty of assault in addition to the prior 2 charges. Not only is it assaulting its host by feeding on them, but when it finds a new host, it'll violently attach itself to them. The Venom symbiote is a truly toxic being, and it's toxic to anyone it encounters. It's something nobody should have to encounter, and to ensure that, we've decided to give it the death sentence. Of course, there are only 2 reliable ways to destroy the symbiote, fire and sound. Either way you slice it, the symbiote's gonna be in for a rough one. Finally, we've reached the last villain, and who else could it be other than the show's primary villain, the Green Goblin? Whether he's dressed up in a Halloween costume or simply Oscorp CEO Norman Osborn, this is one character who's always up to no good. As Norman, he's first and foremost far from an ideal father. He has little interest in the life of his son Harry, and even falsely incriminates him as the Goblin to keep himself from going to prison. So that's child abuse, child endangerment, and incrimination all in one nice neat package. And that's all directed at his own son. As you can guess, Norman isn't any better towards others. He embezzles Toomes' flying technology, leading directly to the creation of the Vulture. Of course, Norman's crimes mostly stem from his alter ego, the Green Goblin. As the show progresses, he becomes more involved in the organized crimes of New York, making him guilty of conspiring and, rather obviously, organized crime. When he's wreaking havoc in the city, he commits many acts of terrorism, and he nearly commits murder in his battles against Spidey and the other crime lords in New York. Green Goblin is easily Spidey's most ruthless villain, as evidenced by his lengthy list of charges.
Guilty. Guilty.
With so many offenses tied to his name, the only sentence that seems appropriate for Osborn is the death sentence. Whether it's carried out via the electric chair, or through lethal injection, or through hanging, doesn't matter to me, I'm not in charge of it. We can't imagine it being a pleasant end, even to a superpowered being like the Goblin. That being said, Norman excels at cheating death, so maybe he'd have something planned for this too.